Hi, everyone. Welcome to Teach, Play, Love.
Today we're going to be talking about tantrums.
This is Teach, Play, Love.
This is a topic that if you are a parent or if you are a relative or a family friend, maybe even a neighbor, you've met a young kid, you probably know a little bit about tantrums.
Yeah, this is not a super fun part of parenting. This is one of the more unpleasant aspects of it, but it's also one of the most universal. I don't think you get out of parenting young kids without encountering a tantrum or maybe a couple hundred tantrums depending on
Right.
your child. So, let's start our conversation right there, Rachel. This
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
typical thing. This is happens to kids. It's not atypical. It's a normal thing.
Right. It is like worlds colliding. They are being asked to do things and experience things and feel things without all of the skills to know what to do about all those things they're experiencing and how to control it and how to deal with all those feelings. So it's just all happening to them at once. And they're using the tools they have available to them. And when I think about something like tantrums, I always think about adults too and what we would do or sometimes do. So if I get frustrated, I do a lot of self-talk. Sometimes I do get like frustrated, but I know what to do in those moments to manage my emotions. I have a whole bunch of decades at this point of experience to tell me, you know what, I've made it through situations like this before. I'm probably going to be okay,
Yeah.
or how to rationalize. I have a ton of tools available to me, so I can use those. Little kids don't have that. The other thing when you think about adults is if someone really frustrates you or something happens, like you get a cut off in traffic, a lot of us aren't regulating our emotions in that moment all that well. Either we're having a version of a tantrum,
Yeah.
it just is an adult version of it too. So, and
Yeah.
sometimes it can get pretty out of control in adult situations also. So, it's not just children that have these emotional outbursts that feel sort of illogical and uncontrollable. It's
Yeah.
adults too, but it's children are going to have them. And if when we start with this idea of like it's going to happen and for good reason, it's not because your child isn't well behaved, it's not because something's wrong with your parenting, it's because they're a child and they're developing. So if we just accept that, it goes a long way in terms of how to then help your child through it, and of course help yourself
Yeah.
through that situation too.
I think you touched on something really important here, which is it's not tantrums usually start with a young child when they need something or they feel misunderstood or they're trying to communicate something. And it's just not an even playing field, right? Like even adults who have been on this earth for decades and have practice and they have every single tool, they have a full vocabulary, they've learned how to take a deep breath, they still struggle with this.
Yep.
And then we look at a 2 or 3 year old and we look at them when they're having a tantrum and it feels so unfair to us and illogical to us when really it makes total sense that
Yep.
they'd be losing it. They don't have the tools yet. They don't have the tools that we have.
Yep.
It's just
I
not
mean,
fair.
and they're spending their whole day at the mercy of someone else's schedule, someone else's decisions. They don't get the things that they want. They have a hard time with delaying gratification in general. And then we're asking them to do that through a busy day. Usually, when a tantrum happens, there's sometimes like they've been asked to do too many things that go
Yeah.
against their developmental capabilities. They have a physical need that they don't know how to get met, and they don't even know how to identify it. I actually just saw a funny video of this dad talking to a young boy eating a sandwich, and he said, next time, the little boy was saying, next time I know that all I needed was a sandwich. And it was just because that probably was all he needed, and he just didn't know that, he didn't know how to express
Yeah.
it, and then he was just feeling real good afterwards having a sandwich. But um I think that, really there are some times that it's just going to be more likely to happen if you ask your child to wait for a long
Mhm.
time. If you take them in a store and they can't have anything, and then they have to wait
Yep.
somewhere else, and then they have to do all these things and they're hungry, of course something's going to happen. It would happen to you too if you were
Mhm.
getting you had no someone just put you in the passenger seat of a car and said you're doing my schedule for the day and you get no choices about it, and you're going to want some stuff and you're not going to be able to get any of that. So
Yeah.
I think when we think of that, we really put it into the context and think from the child's experience, along with the developmental capacity of a 2, 3 year old. Of course, this is going to happen, but this is part of development. Not that
Yep.
that makes it easier, but it makes it
Mhm.
maybe a little easier, right? To know this is part of development, and you can, if you reframe it in some of these ways, you can maybe get through it a little bit easier.
I was just listening to you list all those possible reasons a child might have a tantrum, and I was thinking, oh, Rachel's met my children. Like you must have been in my, were you in my house for the first 8 years of my parenting journey? Because we had meltdowns over every single one of those things that you just listed.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was hungry, didn't know how to tell me they were hungry. Someone was overtired, didn't know how to tell me that. Someone was coming down with a virus, couldn't express it. I asked them to go on too many errands on a Saturday morning. I made them wait too long at the library after they were already kind of like at the end of their like
Yep.
patience. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like the hundreds of reasons I can think of
Yeah.
that are actually justified. That's the thing, it's justified.
And it's good to think about that proactively and then reactively too. So it's when it does happen, like what are the things that led up to this? Was there anything I could have done differently? Get like a lot of times these things happen on vacations when you're like, let's have fun, and they're just gonna not have fun in that moment because of the
No.
just extra emotions, but so off their routine. Even pay attention to things like nutrition, like kids have had a lot of sugar or not a lot of nutrients, they're just developmental
Yes.
capacities are going to be lower. That's true for adults as well. Like all these things. The waiting is one of my biggest ones. We ask kids to wait way too much
Totally.
unnecessarily. Delay gratification. They don't have those skills. They're
Mm.
definitely going to tell you that you've asked too much of them by having some kind of strong emotional reaction. And big emotions are overwhelming. So it's not just that they have a big emotion. So, and they don't even know how to describe it, let alone what to do with it, but it overwhelms them. And the behavior we associate with tantrums is how they're getting all that out. It's what they know how to do. Again, I've been overwhelmed by big emotions. I've certainly had I mean, even in the past couple weeks, I've had big emotions. I just know what to do with those big emotions. So
Yeah.
that's the real difference is, um, with a young child, is that they don't have the experience or the developmental capacities to do that. But they are still communicating with us and telling us loud and clear something went awry here.
Yeah, that's one of our big tenets at Bright Horizons is
Mhm.
behavior is communication.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not when a tantrum is happening or like, oh my goodness, the worst is that moment when you realize it's about to start and it's too late. Like there's almost like you can see them teetering and it's you're at
Mhm.
the top of a roller coaster and this is just gonna go really sideways really fast. They are communicating something to us. It's just not the way that we would like. It's not
Right.
the preferred communication for adults. And another thing that I heard you touch on is this idea of control, right? Like
Yeah.
toddlers and preschoolers want control, as we all do. We all like to feel like we've got autonomy and control over our lives. And young children really don't get that much say in anything. We've said this on the podcast before. There's some study that showed that the toddler a toddler hears on average the word no about 400 times a day. And if
Mhm.
I think about me spending a nice Saturday with my family, if I heard the word no 400 times in a Saturday, I would be in a pretty bad mood. Like I'd be
Yeah.
pretty angry by the
Right.
end of the day. So again, I this is such a relatable part of parenting, but I like to just sprinkle a dash of compassion for these kids on top of this. It's easier for me to say this sitting right here right now at work today, not faced with one of my own children having a tantrum in this moment.
Mhm.
It's really hard. In the moment you as the adult feel out of control. You feel confused sometimes. It feels like this is illogical. I know that I'm sure you and I both have good tantrum stories. Like one of the big ones is about the elevator buttons at the dentist office. We have a dentist where there's no, the stairwell's not really open to pedestrians. They prefer to use the elevator. The absolute meltdown that my son had a few years ago because I pushed the elevator button just unthinkingly. I pushed it.
Mhm.
Complete in the lobby of the dentist office. Total breakdown. It's an
Yeah.
awful feeling. It's awful.
Yeah, it is awful. And like you're I just listened to that story because I'm not emotionally connected to it and I wasn't there. So you just feel that the injustice of someone pushing my elevator buttons just feels so real and so important to that child. And yeah, I have this family that I'm very involved with, and they're like family to me. And there's a 4-year-old in the family, and I just recently spent some time with her, and it was good for me because I kept telling myself like, this is my job, I'm going to kill it at this, I know what I'm doing here. And she definitely was like, I'm going to remind you about how you're just a normal
Mhm.
person that will also struggle with these things. So we had tons of fun, but I definitely did, like, I overdid the tons of fun, and she just ran out of energy for it all, and she just
Yeah.
had a tantrum. And I was in the moment just talking myself through all these things. This is not about me, don't get mad. And that, I think that's another thing
Yeah.
that we'd like to share with everybody too, is that your skill set in regulating yourself is really important in the situation, because this stuff comes often at the end of maybe a power struggle or a long day for you too.
Mhm.
And so you're going to be activated. Your emotions are going to get activated from this. It's really hard to step away and say, this is not about me. This is
Mm.
actually, I can stay calm here. But you need to, for your own sake, for your child's sake, because they're going to need to borrow some of that calm from you. And you escalating is not going to help the situation, nor is it going to help them long term, because we don't want to just get through a tantrum. We want to help build the capacities and the skills to reduce the amount of times
Yes.
a child has to go through that, because it's terrible they don't like it. They don't feel
Mhm.
good about it. They're so overwhelmed by
Mhm.
this big emotion. They're not doing it to you. It's happening to them. One of the examples I've used a lot when I'm talking about teen parenting is that they are the tornado. They're in the eye of the storm. You're getting hit with debris. So
Yes.
it's worse for them. Feels like it's bad for you because you're getting hit with it, but no one likes to feel like that, just so completely overwhelmed by emotions that your only choice is to lay on the floor and kick and scream. That's I mean,
No,
it's
awful.
right.
One of the
So
things, yeah, one of the
yeah.
things I say to families is that I don't know a single 2 or 3-year-old that sits up in their bed in the morning and says, "You know what I'm gonna do today? I'm gonna wreck everyone's morning by throwing an extreme nutty breakdown
Yeah.
tantrum right before we're gonna get in the car to go to work and to
Right,
school."
right,
They don't
right.
plan this stuff out. They're not evil children.
Right.
It's
They
happening
don't
to
even have
them
the
too.
ability, right? They don't have
No.
the ability to be manipulative. We're talking about that they don't have the ability to manage emotions. They can't manage them so well that they have this master plan to be manipulative.
No.
So, one of the things, I know we're going to talk about more of this too, is you said, Claire, where people are, or young children are hearing the word no so often, is one of the ways to think about this is to really paying attention to what has happened beforehand, or what just kind of your child's experience from the perspective we're sharing with you here. And where are the places you can eliminate some of these frustrations just right off the bat? No tantrum needs to happen. You can do this already. Just where can you eliminate some things, and where can you give choices? Because kids love choices. They are all about them. We as adults kind of get like, don't make me make another choice today, just do it for me, or someone decide. But kids do not wear out from the choices. And it's a really good
Mhm.
strategy, instead of saying no, to give them an option or two options that allow them some control over the situation. So really evaluating, do it right now when you're listening to this, or doing it right away before you even have a tantrum
Yeah.
going on, thinking about what could you do, what are you maybe doing that is leading to some of that, or creating conditions that your child might get overwhelmed, or and that what can you do to prevent those things, even if you don't think you're creating the conditions. And then it's something you, Claire, I'll let you talk about it because you're so good at talking about it, but just your child's temperament. Some kids are better at
Mm.
others at being off routine or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you're saying here about being a detective. That's how I'm interpreting
Mm-hmm,
what you're
mm-hmm.
saying, is that there's a lot of like pre-work,
Yeah.
or like, yeah, it's prevention really, like
Mm-hmm.
things that you can be doing during those calm moments, observing your child's temperament. What are they like? Are they slow to transition? Do they have a tricky time moving from one task to another? Some kids are just naturally like that. Is your child the kind of kid who likes to hang back and observe things before they dive in? Do they need yeah, just like I can think of a lot of situations that could maybe not be totally like you can't necessarily prevent all tricky feelings from occurring,
Right.
but you can maybe sidestep a true full blown meltdown if you just do a little bit of detective work beforehand, observe what happened right beforehand. Also, what's my child's temperament like? What are they? Are they more outgoing? Are they more likely to hang back? Are they slow to warm up?
Yeah.
Just a lot of and then setting your child up for success when you know there's going to be a situation coming that there's nothing, no avoiding it. We have to go to the dentist. It makes you nervous. So what are we going to do? Well,
Mhm.
you might have a breakdown about the elevator button, but maybe beforehand I could talk to you a little bit about what's coming next. We could read a book together about going to the dentist to ease
Yep.
some of this. We could read a social story. We can talk about what maybe we have a good nap beforehand, have a nice healthy lunch before we go to the dentist. So everything, all the body functions are in good working order. There's all this prevention work we can do ahead of time just to ease it up a little bit
Yeah.
for
Yep.
kids.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And again, you should do that whether or not you're trying to prevent a tantrum from happening or not. But it is good in terms of preventing them as much as you can. They're still going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to happen. I think it's easy to understand at this point why tantrums happen, but let's talk a little bit about what is actually happening in the brain. So
Yeah.
I'm not a neuroscientist, so I'm not giving us that level of explanation here, but just really simply, there's a front part or top part of your brain and a lower part or back part of your brain. The back lower part of your brain is your amygdala, and I often use the phrasing of amygdala hijacking because
Yeah.
it's that like panic, I'm gonna flight, I'm gonna freeze, and it's just that reactive part of your brain, and that can take over. It can hijack the rest of your brain. And the more sophisticated part of your brain that I've been talking about, that you can calm yourself down, you can regulate, you can use past experiences,
Mhm.
that's the slowest part of your brain to develop.
Hmm.
And so young kids barely have any capacity there. So they're really going to be taken over easily by the amygdala.
Yep.
And when you are that car example or traffic example I gave, that's a lot of amygdala hijacking is happening for adults in that
Yeah.
situation too. But
Yep.
so it's just plain unrealistic to think a child
Yeah.
is going to be able to use cognitive capacities that they don't even have to regulate their emotions or make good decisions. I mean, frankly, they don't even know what a good decision is at that age sometimes, too. They know what they
No.
need in the moment and what will make them feel good in the moment. They are not long term thinkers, they are not planning out, and they don't have a whole toolbox of things to help them through
No.
challenging situations.
It gives me just thinking about first of all, knowing personally, just as a human, what it feels like to have that amygdala hijack. We've all had them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where your heart rate increases, maybe you start sweating, your blood pressure goes up, you are white hot angry, or you're just absolutely falling apart with sadness about something. It's really hard. That is the last moment you want someone coming over to you saying, "Oh, you should just feel better now." Like, no, my body is saying, "No, I'm upset and I need to be upset about
Right.
this." And it
Or if someone says, you know what you should do right now, you should just calm down.
you should calm down. Yeah, why don't you just calm down?
That doesn't
Oh
work.
my goodness. It is you are back here.
Mhm.
Our listeners are not seeing me. I'm tapping the back part of my brain. You are in that amygdala. It feels like a hijack. When it
Yeah.
happens to me, it feels like I've been hijacked.
Yeah.
And it gives me more compassion to think about my little 2 or 3-year-old downstairs lower brain just it's taken over. It is taken
Mhm.
over, and you kinda just have to let it happen at that point. We can talk more about this in a minute, but, they are just kind of offline at that
Yep.
point. That upstairs brain is gone, offline.
Yeah, that's a
The
good way to put it.
planning part of the brain, the part of the brain that controls emotional regulation, the part of the brain that can self-soothe a little bit, it's gone offline. So
Yeah.
just having a little bit of compassion. We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk more about some ways to navigate tantrums when they're actually already happening.
Did you know that you can get the Teach, Play, Love brand of learning for your preschooler every day? The very people you trust for parenting advice are behind our Bright Horizons preschool program. Learning adventures that inspire kids to reach their unique potential. One of a kind preschool for your one of a kind kid. That's Bright Horizons. Enrollment is happening now. Visit brighthorizons.com to find a center near you.
Welcome back to our conversation about tantrums. Not the most fun part of parenting, but we it's just something we have to face. So
Yeah.
I think we've done a pretty good job going through all the reasons why this happens, Rachel. So
Yeah.
now let's talk about what to do. What do we do?
So before we get into that, I want to build a little bit on what we were saying earlier. It's just about framing the situation and what you're trying to do here. So we absolutely want to get through this moment because a lot of times it's in public and we're just like, just get us through this situation. Or it's in front of family members that you're really not excited about this happening. But regardless, to think a little differently. So it's not just about getting through the situation or getting it to stop. If we
Hmm.
can reframe it in terms of using this as an opportunity for you to learn what is what your child needs and what their capabilities are and what stresses them out, but also for you to help them learn how to get through something like this. So I said earlier that they need you to borrow your calm. So first of all, they have to
Yeah.
see that you're calm and they have to be able to know that you are there to help them through this. A lot of times we go right into like, well, this needs to be punished. This is unacceptable. Or I'm
Mhm.
going to bribe them out of this because I don't want this
Yeah,
to happen. Neither of those strategies help the long-term situation. So you're
that's
either going to escalate it with any kind of punishment for something that they actually can't really help. They are, again, managing a situation the best way they know how. And if then you incentivize it or provide a reward for it, you're also not
Mhm.
teaching them any management skills. You're getting them through something. You're teaching them to get through a behavior or an emotion in a not effective way for long-term life. So you can think about, we're in it, we're here. There's nothing I can do to stop it. So what can I do so the next time it's better, or I know better how
Yep.
to prevent it or to get through it. So I just ask and challenge everyone to think differently about, it's not just about getting through it or getting it to stop. What's happening is your child is completely dysregulated. Things are just completely out of whack, and you're there to help them get to regulation so that then you can have a conversation. So then you can be like that little boy who's saying, you know what, I just needed a sandwich. You want to get to that side of the conversation.
We already talked a little bit about a few, like I call it pre-work or prevention strategies.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned offering choices to kind of give them back some of that power that they need. Also, you mentioned like we talked about, you making sure like sleep and nutrition is all, and how much have you already asked them to wait today. Another
Mm-hmm.
really good prevention strategy, if you have the chance, if there's like enough of a kind of an on ramp to the tantrum, is introducing some playfulness or some silliness. I
Mm-hmm.
know not every parent is silly naturally, but I cannot emphasize enough, both as a mother of three children and as a former toddler teacher, how far that will go in diffusing any, like, if tricky feelings are starting to happen and you know what that looks like with your child, just introducing a little bit of silliness, a little bit of playfulness can sometimes
Yeah.
just extinguish it a little bit. And what you're talking about, what is kind of some co-regulation happening there
Yeah,
when you
you're
do that.
co-regulating. You're substituting a new emotion. If you bring some joy and dopamine, some serotonin, some positive chemicals into the situation, you're going to release some things in the
Yeah.
brain. And whatever version of playful and silly that is, you could whatever
Yeah.
your child needs. And that's, a point that we should make too, is that this is about what your child needs, not what you need in this
Yeah.
moment. So you might not like that when you're stressed if someone makes a joke with you or is silly, but your child may be someone who does like that. But just
That's right.
introducing something, we often talk about it as we're redirecting, and then in this case we're
Mm.
redirecting the focus or redirecting the emotion.
Yes, totally. Another great strategy that we have been thinking a lot about at Bright Horizons is mindfulness
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like and what that means. And it kind of goes back to that upstairs downstairs brain, right?
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of thing, right, Rachel? It's like, if you can, I know that there's a book called The Whole Brain Child where they talk a lot about the staircase in between the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. And adults have a really strong staircase. they can go up and down more easily. But children, do they even have a staircase? It's like a raggedy rope swing that's like
Yeah.
fumbling with, like, they cannot figure out how to get
Yeah.
re-regulate, how to. So that's how I don't know how you think of mindfulness,
Mhm.
Rachel. That's one of the ways that I
Yeah,
think
I
about
think
it.
that's a great way to put it. And you can't help but calm down from deep breathing. So if all mindfulness is just a way to center yourself, focus, and you do some deep breathing or concentrate or something on something, or help them be present in the moment, or
Mhm.
feel how their body's feeling. You can say, you can narrate a little bit for them. And I see you're looking really frustrated. I can tell because your hands are clenched and you're choosing to lay on the floor, or just bringing their attention to what's happening. Or what, I know we're still kind of at the start of it and ramping up, but you could say it, just get them to pay attention to what's happening. And I see you and I want to help you. Is there anything I can do? Remember how we learned how to blow a candle out, or triangle breathing, or whatever it might be. Your brains calm down. It is a biological strategy here. It's not just we hope it helps. So that should really help with that prevention piece. And yeah, we're doing it all the time at Bright Horizons now in all of our classrooms with young children. And it's great. It's really building their toolbox. So then you can
Yeah.
tell them later, 5 days, when something else big emotion is hitting them hard, that then they know how to do it, and you just remind them about it.
I love that. I love it so much. Rachel, I'm gonna pitch a question to you that I get
Okay.
all the time from our Bright Horizons families. They say things like, "Okay, I get it. It helps the tantrum if I stay calm. Like, I get that I shouldn't maybe be screaming back or like punishing, but how? Like,
Hmm.
how do I? How do you stay calm as the adult? Like, why is it
Hmm.
important, and how do I do it?"
Yeah, I mean it's hard. There's not a magical answer to it, because
Yeah,
I think maybe just recognizing that is part of it, is that this is hard, and knowing what's going on in your brain. So your amygdala is in danger of getting hijacked as well, because
correct.
that is just what is happening there. And
Mhm.
you can take a little bit of a pause too. You can use some of that mindfulness stuff. I remember one time one of my children just was really in the throes of something, and I just laid down next to her and was there with her. And it wasn't, I don't know how thought out that strategy was, but I didn't know what else to do, and it really helped us. And it is such a
Yeah,
memorable moment for the both of us, because I just got in it with her and just
yeah,
said, I'm here with you. You let me know when we're done with this." And then I didn't have to take on any of the trying to get her out of it. I just kind of helped her be there with it. And it's
yeah.
meaningful to me. That memory is meaningful to me as a parent, because it taught me something about what I could do in those moments. And that was probably the best I ever did, and just stop trying to manage it so much. And then I continue to use that strategy. So it helps you, so you can, I understanding I need to calm myself so
Yeah,
that I can help my child through this, and we can do it together. There's this phrase that we use a lot called co-regulating. So
yeah,
you're trying to get them back on track with regulation by regulating yourself with them. I think the other thing is whatever works for you. Some of the things we've already talked about, like I already said this, but the mindfulness, that will work for everyone. Sensory is important. Maybe turn the
mm,
lights down lower. Maybe make
yeah,
sure that you have, like, do you have a sound machine that's calming and relaxing? What
mm,
are the smells in the area? Do you have anything you can clay, or anything you can play with that's soothing or sensory, like play, even water play. Kids love water play too. So anything that can maybe calm things down, you can participate in that with your
yeah.
child as well.
I love that. And every single thing that you mentioned just now, Rachel, is such good role modeling, because what they don't need, if you imagine your 2, your 3, your 4-year old having that just total dysregulation, the amygdala has taken over. They are feeling scared, angry, worried, sad, whatever it is. What they don't need is to turn around and then see the person that they trust most in the world also having a breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
That's more terrifying. It makes you more upset, right?
Yep,
So
yep. That's such a
you're
good point, Claire.
modeling.
Let's emphasize that, because I think that is so you're when we talked about this is hard on this child. If they look at their most trusted person that they're relying on to help them also losing it, that makes it does make it worse. So just knowing that doesn't mean, if anyone's listening to this and this has happened to you, that you've ruined things or you're a
No,
terrible parent. It
no.
just means that you are normal, and you did, we all did it at one point. But knowing that even if it's on the outside only, that you're remaining calm, it is really important for them to see that they can have that level of an emotional outburst and that you're still going to be stable and
Yes.
loving for them. And that you can be all sorts of crazy on the inside. But if you can keep the outside calm for them, it will get you through this and beyond it so much faster.
Yeah, what you're saying to your child, if you're able to stay with them. I know I'm not a fan, and you're not a fan, and Bright Horizons not a fan of timeouts, but instead
Mm-mm.
taking a break together. I'm gonna stay right here. I can, like you said, Rachel, labeling those feelings. I can see you're really mad. I'm not gonna talk you out of your big feelings. Everyone's allowed to have big feelings. I'm having some big feelings right now too. I think I need to do some calming down. I'm gonna sit down right here in the kitchen floor, and I'm gonna take some deep breaths. And you can say, so you're not abandoning your child. What you're saying to them is, I'm not afraid of your big feelings, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can I can actually be witness to them, and I'm going to stay right here with you. And you can even say out loud, I'm having some big feelings right now too. I'm feeling a little upset. I think I need to take some deep breaths. And what are
Mm-hmm.
it's not a weakness. Doing that's not showing your child a weakness. It doesn't mean that they're the boss and they're getting away with everything. It's the opposite. You're saying, I respect you so much, and I respect my own feelings so much that we're just going to just take a second. We got to take a
Mm-hmm.
beat and calm down for a minute together, and you're going to co-regulate, right? It's
Yep.
everything you've been saying. I just love all that. It's such good role modeling for them.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. And to find an exit out of it. So at the end of those big emotions, adults too, right? You're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that was kind of embarrassing. I went overboard." And again, kids aren't able to articulate that, but they do have feelings that aren't great even on the way out of the tantrum, when they're able to think a little bit more, and being compassionate and kind and safe for them on that end of it too is important. So what makes sense for them, and again, give them choices. Do they need a comfort item? Would they like a hug? Would they like to sit on your lap? Would they like to hold your hand for a while? Would they like to have a special snack? What would be the thing to
Yeah.
kind of help them exit through this? And then talk about it. You can have limits. The reason we don't like timeouts is there's no value to them, and they are punishing and they can be shaming. There's some negatives to them, but they don't really do anything to get you anywhere. They just stop something from happening. They don't start anything new happening. And
And there's
that's what
no
you
learning.
really
There's
want.
no growth. Yeah.
There's no
There's no
growth. There's no growth. It just takes them out of a situation and puts them back into it, and they're frustrated. And so there's just really no value to them. It's not a good use of anybody's time, and they
no.
can have negativity. But that doesn't mean there's not limits. That doesn't mean that you can't say, we have to learn from this. We can't, that what happened wasn't okay, and here's why. What could we do next time instead? What do you think we should do now? How do we fix the situation? I was at a park with my little friend I was talking to recently, and two children ran into each other. And it was so interesting to watch how the parents were dealing with it, because one parent was immediately saying, "You need to apologize right now. Go over and say you're sorry," and giving the script. And of course, that kid was having a hard time with those directions. And then the other parent was saying, "What are the words you can use to tell that child how you felt about it?" And that child was having a decent time through the situation because they were being empowered to process the situation. So
Yeah.
that's what I would suggest, is not telling your child what to do now, but process it. What could we have done differently? What can you do now? Maybe something has happened. Maybe they've broken something or hurt somebody, or something has happened that they need to now do something about. That's the time to do it. Not in the middle of the tantrum, but
Right.
afterward. That's the time to learn the lesson and have the
Really
discussion.
important point, Rachel, which is that I think, again, because we are often we're always role models, we are trying to do the right thing. Sometimes while our child is still in the tantrum, like in those big feelings, we try to skip over to the part where we teach them something, or
Right,
we
right.
try to reinforce the limit, like it's not okay to throw things across the room, or whatever it is that caused the breakdown. That's not the time to do it. Your child is
Mm-mm.
not, that's upstairs brain work. To think about future plans, problem solving, critical thinking, like what could you have done differently? That's like really advanced critical thinking for a
Yeah.
preschooler, you need to wait for that upstairs brain to be back online before there's any conversation about next time or what happened before or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not, you're not endorsing it, and you're actually not going to perpetuate it. That's what sometimes people get a little worried about, is if I don't give my child a consequence for a tantrum, will they keep having them? But what
Yeah.
you're actually going to get them out of them faster by building the skill set and giving them tools so they can learn to name and manage their emotions and understand what got them into the situation so they can be part of preventing the situation from happening again. And you, again, we've talked about this a couple of times already here, but constantly, is figure out what works for your child, not for you.
Yeah.
You might be someone that is like no problem changing your routine 10 times a day, but your child may not be like that. So if you might be contributing to some of these situations, not intentionally, but
Right.
in a way that you can, be that detective you mentioned, and reflect on how you can help the situation so you're not even getting to this place that they have this amygdala hijack. I think I think I'd like to end, Claire, too, with just that, where we started, is telling parents and reminding every family member, whoever's listening to this, that a tantrum is not a reflection on you personally,
That's
and it
right.
is not happening to you. It's really not even about you. It is
Right.
100% what's happening to this child. They are showing you with their behavior that they are overwhelmed by some emotions that they don't know how to handle.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It means you're just a parent or someone with a child. That's all it means. And that it means this child is completely normal as well. It's not a failure on anyone's part. It's just a real opportunity. It's going to happen. So use that opportunity as a way to build that connection, to model good behaviors, and to get to know your child and help them with a really complicated thing in life, to manage those big emotions in a way that can help them be successful later on in life as well as in the moment.
Get parenting advice from Rachel and Claire. You can leave them a voicemail by calling 617-673-8881, and your question may be answered in a future episode of Teach, Play, Love. You can also send them an email at teach.playlove@brighthorizons.com. For more expert guidance on early childhood development, check out our family resources at brighthorizons.com.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to us. Find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
See you next time on Teach, Play, Love.
And discover parenting as the joy it was meant to be.